All right. Okay. Welcome everybody. If you guys don't know already, this is a free webinar for you guys to introduce OBS, Open Broadcast Software. My name is Cliff. Last name Kabute. And let's go ahead and begin with the slide deck first. All right. So just a few notations here while we go through this. First up, this is what we're going to be covering today. We'll be covering first off a few things before we actually dive into OBS. A couple use cases, some technical specs as far as the computer and internet requirements. Then we'll jump into OBS and I'll start demoing from there on. Things about OBS settings. That's the first thing that we'll tackle. That's probably one of the most confusing parts about how to use OBS. And then we'll go into the interface itself, what everything means within that interface and how to use it. And then last, I'll go into some tips and tricks. I think we have quite a few different people. Last time it's mainly that I did a webinar was mainly dancers, but I think we have a few DJs here too. So this will be a good kind of mixture of some tips and tricks for both dancers and for DJs here. And then last, we'll go over any kind of question and answers and some additional resources that you guys can use. All right. So before we begin, just again a few announcements as we're going through this. First, if you haven't already, my suggestion is to go ahead and download OBS. It's a pretty small download. Installation shouldn't take that long. As we go through these announcements, if you want to go ahead and do it now, by the time we're done with the announcements, you should have it up and running. So you want to go to that website down below. It's called obsproject.com/download. You're going to click on either Windows or Mac, or if you're using Linux, they have a Linux version as well. You can go ahead and download that now, and then go ahead and go through the installations. At the end of this section, if you're not done, just kind of holler at me real quick and let me know that you just need a few more minutes for it to finish. And the only reason why is because it kind of will be helpful for you to kind of follow along if you can, especially if you have a dual screen monitor, so you can see my screen on one side and the OBS interface on the other. So it is to your benefit to already use it. If not, it's okay. This video is being recorded. I was going to go live on Facebook Live as well, but because I'm having problems with the webcam not being flipped around, I'm just going to flip it later and then post this video for review later. Okay. Next, if you don't mind, I'm on a single PC stream right now. I was trying to do it with two PCs set up, but I couldn't get it ready in time for this webinar. But if you could turn off your webcam, not your voice, or actually keep yourself on mute until you have questions, but the webcam itself, if you can actually turn off your video, just because I'm using a lot of internet resources right now, and it will help me tremendously. All right, so go ahead and turn off your webcams if you haven't done already. I think most of you guys have. Next is ask questions. The more questions, the merrier. Okay, and I'll let you know if it's something that we will need to discuss at the end during Q&A, because it might take a little too much time. Again, I'm estimating this to be anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours long of a webinar. So there's a lot to go through, but I will answer any questions that you may have. So please ask at the time and feel free to interrupt me at any time that you have questions. All right. Okay, again, if you don't mind, if you guys can put yourselves on mute. I don't think I can mute people automatically here, but if you don't mind, just make sure that you guys are on mute so that everybody else can hear me clearly. All right. And then just unmute yourselves when and if you do have questions. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. No problem. Okay. Next. A little about me, about who's giving this presentation, just so that you know where my background is coming from. I've been dancing professionally for over 20 years, and obviously dancing more than that in my training days. I've done everything from Hollywood commercials, some stage performances, and teaching actually for more than 15 years as well. So proficient in dancing. DJing, I've been doing it for over 15 years. I've also been mobile DJing for maybe the past, I would say maybe like 6-7 years now. I also have a background in photography and videography, some of it on a professional level, but I won't call myself a professional because I don't practice very too often. It's more of a hobby, but I understand everything, and as far as all the technicality behind it, and have an extensive background and knowledge in photography and videography. Also, my day job, I've been working technical support for Semantic Internet Security Services for over 15 years, so well versed in the computer space as well as internet security. All right. Okay, and then last, it is a lot of work, but donations are appreciated. This webinar is free. I give all my information here free because I know during this pandemic, times have been tough and we all had to kind of switch a little bit over to these tech things. I enjoy tech a lot, and you can kind of obviously see that I use it to my advantage, both in social media as well as in dance world and DJing world. But it is a lot of work, and while I don't expect anyone to actually, pay for any of these services, any donations would be much appreciated. All right, so let's kind of talk about some use cases, mainly focusing on dance classes, but for DJs, if you have any kind of questions as to what scenarios you're running into that you'd like to try to use OBS, please bring it up during this section as well. All right. Okay, first off, again, for classes, I've seen a lot of people talk about trying to find ways to use multiple angles. Excuse me. One of the biggest ones I've seen with dancers for their dance classes is they're using multiple Zoom accounts with multiple devices, which is a really bad way of doing it. Unfortunately, you run into a lot of audio issues as well as video issues and just syncing of audio and video at the same time. So really bad way of doing it. And I'm going to show you later on during the tips and tricks sections on how OBS can really take advantage of this scenario. All right. You can, with multicam, you can show, two instructors, bring guest speakers and assistants on. And one of, I think, the main reasons why people want to show multicam is, for full body from the front side, from the back, the sides, and even just the feet. There's been a few tap dancers that wanted to show just the feet, or ballet dancers, instructors that wanted to just show the feet, but also, full body from head to toe as well. So OBS will definitely utilize a multicam view on a single screen here for you. All right. Another use is for OBS is a lot of graphic overlays, animations as well. There's lots of borders and backgrounds just to make it look more appealing, lower thirds, or even instructions to give to your students. So for example, let's say beginning of class, you want to show an image or an example or a video example of what's going to be taught today. You can run those videos all in, the same screen without having to always do all these play buttons and switching between programs and everything. All right, it can be all done in OBS. And just interactivity. So being interactive, especially when we're talking about for events. So I know some people, and I've seen in a lot of other Facebook dance groups, and even DJ groups too, that they're trying to do events, hold events. Obviously, with COVID-19, it's been tough to even just throw any kind of showcase or events or anything. And we've been trying to do this all online. So one of the key things that I think a lot of people are missing with being interactive is with your audience, and how to use that with chat. How do you become more interactive with your audience? So that, to me, that is like a big miss, where, instead of just showcasing and making it look like it's just a movie, involve your audience. That way it's more exciting and draws more attention for your guests and your audience to be a part of the show rather than just watching a show. And I'll show a couple of tricks there too at the end on how we can do this. I've held an online event maybe about 3-4 months ago. It was called You Be the Judge, and I used a lot of these tricks to actually make it more exciting for the audience. Live polls, voting, and then even real-time raffles and giveaways. So my event was called You Be the Judge, and it was a dance competition. But instead of having real judges, everybody on chat was able to vote on each round who they wanted to win. So by the end of the round, we just tally it up on the polls, and everybody can see the polls live happening. And that's how we picked out our winners. We did real-time raffles and giveaways. And then we did a lot of screen alerts, so people can type messages that pop up on the screen, especially if they do donations or they want to send out a special message to anybody. There's ways to do that. All right. Okay. So before I move on to this next section, is there any questions as far as any other use cases that you possibly want me to go over as far as OBS or how to use OBS?
I have a question.
Sure.
All these capabilities, and I'm new to all of this, but looking at all the capabilities, the multi-camera feature looks really cool. But are you able to automate this thing in terms of the cameras, doing its thing, zooming in or out? And I mean, having OBS, does that mean now you hire, you get all this extra equipment? Now, do you need a crew? I mean,
Right.
how much is automated? I mean,
Right.
that's kind of what I want.
Sure. No, that's a great question. So just to give you a little background on OBS, before I kind of answer that question, OBS was actually made to make broadcasting simpler for streamers, particularly in the gaming industry. I'm sure everybody is pretty aware of e-games and Twitch and everything, and how the gaming streaming world has just blown out of proportion. OBS is the tool that everybody uses in order to stream to Twitch, their games and everything. So if you ever watch those streams, you can see that they're very interactive. And I would say about 80 to 90% of those, whatever you see on Twitch, is all single person while they're gaming. Right? So there is a lot of automation happening, but at the same time, there's extra tools for you to help you better manage things. Okay, so again, what I'm going over with OBS is just the introduction and the base level for you to start diving into this world. Okay, there's a ton of other tricks and tips that I unfortunately, we'd be here for days if I'd have to go over all of that. So we'll go, I'll talk about the basics now, but maybe later, maybe next month, I'll do an advanced tutorial, something that that can help everybody. And I'll probably post some polls or some some questions in the Facebook group on what you guys want to see. That way that I can conduct the webinar a little bit better. But yes, to answer your question, there are some things that you can automate, and then some things you can't. All right. I think one of the things you just mentioned was about zooming in and out with the camera. Unfortunately, not fully. There are tricks where you can just push a button real quick and it'll automatically zoom. But as far as zooming in to something that's kind of like in motion or in constant motion, unfortunately you'll need a cameraman for that. Okay. So again, when I go over to the section 2 tips and tricks, just bring up some other scenarios or case scenarios that you want to kind of see, or even during the Q&A, so that we don't kind of go overboard here. If you want to stay behind, I'll show whatever you guys want me to show. Okay, and all the possibilities. All right. Last thing, again, I just want to let you know a little bit again the background of OBS. What OBS did was, in order to make their software easier for streamers, they basically took real broadcasting software and dumped it down for streamers. So when I mean real broadcast software, I'm talking about the ones that you see newscasters use, or sports events like the NBA and NFL. If you ever look at the software and the equipment that they use, it's all available in OBS. All right, so you're taking professional, software, but we're making it available and open source and free, to everybody else in the world. All right, so though a lot to learn, but again, we're just going to be going over the basics on just how to use it. But at the end of this, you should be able to know enough, or at least be able to review all this information and actually start streaming on your own. Okay, hopefully that answered your question. Any other questions before I move on as far as use cases? Okay, cool. So, again, technical specs. All right, now these specs aren't proven. All right, there's so much, how can I say this? There's a difference between all of these specs and what's the minimal requirements and what you actually need. Okay, it's really going to be dependent on how you use OBS. So I want you to know that these specs that I'm going by are the base model. So if, let's say, for example, you only have one camera angle and maybe a few graphics, okay, versus, again, like I said, this software is meant for gaming. So the computer and the computer requirements already for a game, and then to add on top of that OBS, it requires a really high demanding computer, right? This the specs that I'm giving you here are really about just kind of the base, where what you need in order to just set up a few camera angles, maybe 2-3 camera angles, some pictures, and a few motion graphics and alerts here and there. Okay, we'll go over what all that means in a minute, but like I said, it's kind of like the bare minimum. All right. Okay, so as far as CPU usage, this chart here on the left, you'll see the top row is going to be for minimal usage. Like I said, what the minimal usage is: a few cameras and a few graphics here and there. Advanced usage is going to be more like 4 or 5 multiple cameras, some movie clips, animations, the whole 9 yards there. Right. And then we'll go over through the CPU. So the first one, an Intel processor or an AMD Ryzen processor. Okay, anything below may work, but you'll have problems. Okay, you'll be able to run the software, but you're gonna get hiccups about the stream is stuttering or audio sounds crackly. That's gonna be all due to lower specs. Okay, so I just want you to understand that, like, a lot of these are just about the minimal. So if you have questions on why, hey, it's not running properly, well, if you don't meet these minimal requirements, you're gonna have problems. Okay. Uh-oh, got some music going on there. Okay, so Intel i3 or AMD Ryzen 3 and below. These are pretty old processors, or I'm sorry, above. These processors, I can't recall when they were released, but they're pretty old. So a lot of modern computers should be able to have these processors. The other ones that are still in production as far as computers are concerned that don't meet these are like Intel Quad Duo processors. If it doesn't have that i3, i5, i7, or even i9 name in the Intel processor, and it's like Celeron processors or Yeah, Intel Celerons or Intel Core Duos. Those will have a lot of problems. Okay. And then same goes for AMD. AMD Ryzen 3 is pretty kind of old. Not too old like the i3, but they're quite a few years old already. But those will work. Anything AMD Ryzen 3 or above. Okay. And then again, for the advanced users, i7s and above, when we talk about streaming and recording at the same time, i7 is the way to go, okay, and above. Anything below that, you're going to have problems trying to stream and record at the same time. Doing one or the other is fine, but when you try to combine streaming and recording at the same time, you're going to run into problems if you don't have a high CPU, right? And then again, AMD Ryzen 7 above, if you want to use AMDs. GPUs, you don't necessarily need a dedicated GPU, but it helps out your computer tremendously, all right? If you don't have a dedicated GPU or a graphics card, then I would suggest making sure that you would use an Intel i5 at least, or an AMD Ryzen 5 chip at least, because if you don't have a dedicated GPU or a graphics card in your computer, it's gonna be more CPU or processor intensive, right? Okay, and then advanced users, obviously, if you do have a graphics card, the best ones, at least for doing both recording and streaming at the same time right now, I would say at least go with the NVIDIA GTX 1060 or Radeon RX 580 and above. Right. Anything newer than that, you're in good shape. And RAM, 4 to 8 gigs RAMs on minimal, and about 8 to 32 for advanced users. Okay, so those are computer specs. All right. Internet upload speeds. Okay, now this also varies.
Cliff,
yes.
Cliff.
Sure.
Can I? And I don't want to be. I'm looking at the screen like your image or your slide, and it's really distorted a little bit. And when I increase it, it's really hard to see what the wording is. And I don't know if I'm the only one having that problem. Is there anyone else having that issue? Maybe I'm blind, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because I don't know if the recording is going to be that way as well. So just FYI.
Okay.
Yeah, it's blurry on my end too.
Yeah,
Is
super blurry for me.
Oh boy. Okay.
Me as well.
Sorry about that, guys. Okay. I'll tell you what. I usually make these slide decks available for you guys to download later. So these charts will be available to you. But thank you for pointing that out. Unfortunately, there's not really much that I can do as far as the quality is concerned right now. It actually is going to deal more with Facebook Messenger, because I'm not streaming it through Facebook Messenger. This is another technique that I'm going to show you how I'm doing this as well. So just an FYI, I'm not actually using OBS to stream or anything to Facebook rooms right now. So yeah, it's kind of tough for me to deal with these settings as far as what Facebook is offering me. So they don't let me kind of like clean up the image or anything for you. So it will be like I said, I'm recording it locally, so it shouldn't be that way when I record it. And then as well as the slide deck will be available to download. So hopefully you guys can make out, especially when I go over it through the demo. So I'm gonna kind of talk over and read out what's actually going to be said for everything. But yes, thank you for noting that for me. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so moving on. We're gonna talk about internet upload speeds. Okay, now I'm gonna read everything out here for you guys. So these upload speeds are based on streaming with OBS only. It does not take into consideration other internet applications being used in conjunction with OBS, like Zoom meetings, YouTube videos, Spotify, and others. Okay. The chart does not reflect download speeds, as upload speeds is what's most important when using OBS. Okay, and if you ever need to test your internet upload speeds, there's one of the best websites to use is called speedtest.net. And again, this link will be available on the slide deck for download. Okay. So the chart, what it actually describes is kind of like the base model or the basis, again, just like the computer specs, the bare minimum of what you need in order to stream on different resolutions as well as different frame rates. Okay. Resolutions is 720, 1080, what you hear from TVs, right? When we're talking about computers kind of have higher end specs. They'll go sometimes beyond 1080, but for streaming, and I'm particularly talking about streaming to YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or Twitch, you really don't want to go anything above 1080, okay? Or else you're going to run into huge problems, even if you have a high-end computer, right? Not just internet speeds, but it's Twitch servers and YouTube servers. You actually have to be like a partner in order to access their higher-end data-rated servers there to stream like at 4K, okay? So I would say stick with 720 or 1080. A lot of gamers, they stick with 720 because most people are watching from a computer or tablet or phone anyways. So 720 is actually fine. It looks great and you can see a lot of detail in it. 1080, you can go 1080 if a lot of your viewers are watching from a television. That might be a better choice. Okay. As far as frame rates are concerned, frame rates, they call them FPS. Frames per second. So with every frame or an image, so think of a frame as being a picture. Okay, so for every second, there's going to be 30 frames or 30 images in a full second. Okay, for those that don't know, or 60. Okay, those are the two options that I want you guys to kind of be most concerned with. As far as computers are concerned, okay, we won't go into those that know about videography much, where there's other frame rates like 59.97, 24, 23.976, etc., etc. There's all kinds of other different frame rates for movie industry, film industry, television, broadcasting. There's different rates, but when we're strictly talking about streaming over the computer and through YouTube or Spotify, Twitch and stuff, 30 and 60 are the most common. And in your cases, I highly recommend to stay with 30. Okay, 60, gamers want to see 60. All right, so if you're into gaming, 60 is probably going to be the more preferred. But if you're in the dance or DJ scene, 30 will be fine. You can try 60 if your internet speeds can reach to those required needs, but I would recommend try 30 first before you try going up to 60. Okay, so now for the speeds itself. Again, we're talking about upload speeds, not download. Okay, download's still going to be used, but download is going to be stuff that, like, for example, I asked you guys to turn off your video. If you guys all had your video, you would all be eating up my download speeds. Okay, but me presenting to you, pushing you my video screen or what my webcam screens, that's the upload speed. So all that video that needs to be encoded and pushed up to the internet, that is upload, and that's what's most important with OBS. Okay, so with upload speeds for 720 at 30 frames per second, you're gonna need at least 3.5 megabytes per second or above. Okay, again, you can test your speeds. If you want to go to the website right now to even test your speeds, you can. Again, the website's called speedtest.net, and you can see what those speeds are for your internet connection. Okay, and my suggestion is always run the speeds anytime that you go live. Okay, so not just once, but anytime that you go live, run a test to see if you meet those speed requirements. Okay. Moving on, for 1080 at 30 frames per second, it's going to be 5.5 megabytes per second and above. Okay. And then moving back to 720, but at 60 frames per second, we're looking at same as 1080/30, which is 5.5 megabytes and above. And then of course at 1080 at 60 frames per second, you're going to be looking at 7.5 megabytes per second and above. Okay. Now these speeds are based on Twitch requirements. YouTube actually has a few different ones, right? Their recommendations are actually a little bit less than what's mentioned here. That's just because, you know, YouTube or Google has better servers, right, and better connections to their servers, but they're not that far off. So I would say to stay on the safe bet, you know, go by this chart or above it. And again, don't forget that this doesn't account for any other internet-based applications that you're going to be using at the same time OBS. So if you're opening up browsers to YouTube videos during your live set, that's also download and upload speeds. So, you know, at the same time that you're pushing out 3.5 megabytes per second for OBS, you still need more for playing your YouTube video. Okay, so you have to have some boundaries there. They say that about 20% more of your internet speed is needed. Okay, so let's say 3.5 megabytes for 720 at 30 frames for OBS, but you need another 20% more for other internet traffic. And that's always a safe bet for you. Okay, okay, any questions about internet speeds? Okay, let's get down to the nitty gritty then. I'm gonna start demoing things in OBS. Again, sorry about the, oh, do we have a question? Or someone's mic unmuted. I think someone unmuted their mic. Okay, so if there's no questions, I'm gonna start diving into OBS Direct. All right, so let me switch over to the screen. This is not OBS, this is Streamlabs OBS version. So there's another version. I won't go in depth in this one, but I will show you OBS, which is this one here. Okay, and again, I do apologize about the quality. I'm probably will start having to research different ways of, you know, conducting these webinars if Facebook doesn't clean up their quality issues here. But okay, let's go over OBS. We're gonna start with the settings. Okay, so don't worry about this interface yet. Well, we'll go over what the interface is for and everything. But again, as I mentioned before, settings is the most confusing part about OBS to most new users, and is the one that you need to get right in order for your stream to actually look good. All right. Okay, first off, this general section. Okay, again, if you have OBS downloaded already, you might want to take a look at it real quick while I'm talking here. But OBS in the general settings section here, it's just that it's a lot of general stuff. It doesn't have a lot to deal with you know, the streaming side of things, but it's more on just how to use OBS. So here, obviously, you have the language, the theme. You can go from dark to light versus all these other themes. Automatically check for updates, open stats dialogues. You probably wouldn't need that for now. Some people do want that. Output, it's talking more about what to do, like confirmation before you start streaming, confirmation about stopping records, automatically recording, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's just the output section. Source alignments and snapping, this is just more about when you're kind of designing the overall layout of what you're streaming. All right, so snap sensitivities, snap sources as far as the edge of the screens and how they kind of align together and whatnot. Okay, so that just deals with just the overall design, just tools for the overall design. Then we have projections, hide cursor over projections, just whether your cursor will show up if you're moving it around on the screen or not. And then some other options here, make projections always on top, save projectors on exit. So those tools, usually the default is going to be the one you're going to want to use. So you probably don't want to touch this too much unless you know what they're used for, or if you really want to customize the overall feel of how you're using OBS. Okay. System tray information. Those of you that know much about computers, system tray information is usually stuff on your toolbar of your computer. For Mac, it's on the top right. For Windows, it's on the bottom right. So just whether it appears there or if it's running in the background or not. Preview, don't really need to know much about that. Importers, yeah, no one really uses that. Studio mode, I'll show you what it is during the tips and tricks section. So we'll go over that a little bit later. And then multi-view, if you're using multiple monitors and how those can be used. Most people won't use this. Oh, I'm sorry. Multi-view, I forgot to list that down. But multi-view is actually a view for OBS that actual real studio broadcasters use. Okay, and we're talking about, again, newscasters, sporting events like the NBA, NFL. Excuse me. Yeah, and I'll show that to you guys later on in the webinar. Okay, any questions about the general section? Okay, moving on to the stream section, which is the one right underneath the general if you're following along. Here, it's just the stream information. And what I mean by that is what we're streaming to, what service we're streaming to, Twitch, YouTube Live, Facebook. There's a whole bunch here that's going to be listed, or you can set a custom one. Okay. The custom ones are going to be more for your non-typical services. There's a few out there like Restream, but I think Restream's added on here now. Yeah, Restream's added on here now, so it's on a typical service now. But there are some services that aren't going to be listed here, and you can actually add those in here too and stream to those services. I think like Mixcloud. So for you DJs out there, I don't think Mixcloud's on here just yet. They'll probably add it later on. So in order to stream, you need basically two informations to any service. Okay, even if you select Twitch here, it already automatically selects a server here. So you log into your account and it'll grab the server information and the key information. But if I go back to custom here, which I typically use for the services that I use to stream, there's always two information that you'll need here: server and stream key. Those are the two information that you need from any service in order to stream direct to them. Okay, and then for everyone else to view. Without these, you're not going to be able to have a successful stream or actually stream at all. Okay, so the server is obviously the server that you need to connect to, and then the stream key is your actual account or your channel or your profile or whatever it is. So it's specific to you. Okay, now the server is okay to share because it's usually something public that anybody can get, but the stream key is something that you want to be very careful about. Okay, it's unique to you and it can change every time you stream. Okay, there's ways to not have it change every time, but that stream key is unique to your own profile. So if you share that stream key to someone else, they can literally stream to your channel or your profile. Okay, so do not share that unless you really want that other person to stream for you. Right? Okay. Any questions on the stream section? Okay, moving on. This is probably the part that confuses the most people here, because it is probably one of the more important parts. And I'm actually going to return to it because I wanted to go over some other ones before we go this, which is the output section. Okay, these are all the settings that actually you need to go over and in fine detail in order to have a clean stream. It's all going to reference the quality and what computer resources are being used in order to achieve the overall quality of your stream. And what I mean by quality is whether it looks pixelated or not, or if it's sharp or not, or if the colors are, you know, correct, or if they're a little washed out or not. Okay, so everything as far as the video quality as well as the audio. Okay, the audio is a little bit simpler, but you can set audio bit rates here too. Okay, but we'll go over that in just a second. I wanted to go over two sections underneath it. The first one being audio. So underneath it on the audio, you could set the sample rate. My suggestion is to use 44.1 kilohertz, just so because it's lower data rate. But if you have good internet speeds and a little bit higher spec computer, you can use 48. Although even 48 can cause problems. The only thing is most of your audio equipment should match. Now, to dancers, that probably doesn't mean much, so I want you to stick to 44.1. For DJs, I'm sure you understand, you know, but again, all your DJ hardware needs to match, right? So if you're gonna stick on 44.1, you know, everything else has to be on 44.1. If you're on 48, everything has to be on 48. Okay, for me, I have mine on 48. You can go for channels, stereo, 5.1, 4.1, 7.1, stereo, mono. They're all supported. So if you have a sound card and you can support 7.1 Dolby Digital, you know, you can actually push that kind of audio through OBS. Right? So again, like I said, very high-end, you know, features in OBS, but free. Okay, then we're going to talk about global audio devices. This whole section here, we have desktop audio 2, mic auxiliary audio. Let me disable that right now. And then auxiliary audio 2, 3, and 4, all underneath it. Now these are the audio devices that you can actually check. So you can actually have 2 desktop audios, right? And that just captures whatever sound comes from your desktop. And then 4 auxiliary. Now these are devices that are connected by USB to your computer. Okay, so right now I have a ton here, a ton of selections. I have voice meter, a USB microphone. Actually, I have 2 USB microphones, but one's not connected right now. An audio interface and some other options here. Internal microphones and some other line-in auxiliary inputs. Okay, so you can choose which audio inputs you want to be able to push through here. Okay, one thing I wanted to mention, and I did forget this, I'm actually showing you this on a Windows computer, but all of it is pretty much the same on a Mac, with the exception of a few things I'm going to show you during the tips and tricks section. Okay, there's a few things that are not available on a Mac as of yet. Okay, it's still in development, but there's going to be a few features that are not available currently for Mac, right? But everything that I'm showing you from here on out until the tips and tricks section are all available on the Mac, and it's the same thing. All right. Okay, moving on. Meters, just the view. This is going to apply more for DJs than anything else. It's just going to be the decay rate of what the level meters are going to be looking like and how fast they go. So you can actually set that decay rate, and then the peak metering type. Okay, how they're being sampled. All right. Excuse me. There's an advanced section for monitoring devices, not really important, and some hotkeys. So you can actually set some hotkeys here for the audio section, which is, you know, you can set some stuff for push to mute and the delay of the button when you actually push the button to mute. So you can set those hotkeys on your keyboard or even MIDI devices. So for DJs out there, if you have MIDI controllers, you can actually you know, plug in a MIDI controller and MIDI map a lot of those buttons over for OBS. Right. So those of you guys that DJ with dicers or any other, like even keyboard MIDI controllers, you know, all of those things, they can be MIDI mapped using OBS. Okay. And then But yeah, so these hotkeys for the audio section is just more for the push to talk features. Okay, any questions on this audio section so far? Or any other questions just in general? Okay, moving on. Video. Video is pretty basic. This is going to be the base canvas and base and the output resolution. So the base canvas resolution is what you're actually working with. So currently in OBS, if I push this window around here, this black box represents what you're going to be displaying for all your viewers. Okay, so hopefully you can see my mouse. But in 1080, so right now I have the base canvas set at a resolution of 1920 by 1080. So that's a 1080 resolution. Okay. This again, this is the setting that you want to be concerned about based on your internet speed. So if we go back to the slide deck and go by those charts, you know, based on your internet speeds, this is what you're going to be selecting as far as your base resolution. Okay. And again, the setting that I'm going to recommend for you guys again is the basics, all right, and what you should be using. So what I suggest, just so that you don't cause yourself any trouble, is to always match the base resolution to the output resolution. Okay. The output resolution, which is the selection right below it, is actually what's being outputted to the stream. So you can have something like a 1080 base resolution, which is what you're using in your guidance and all your images and everything that are appearing in this black box. But the output scaled resolution can be 720, maybe something lower. And that's being pushed out to the stream. So while you may be working OBS in 1080, you can push out a 720 stream over to YouTube Live or Twitch or, you know, Facebook Live or whatnot. Okay, so that's how that works. But to save yourself on computer resources and internet resources, I highly recommend you stick with the same base resolution and the same output resolution. It just makes life easier. It makes, you know, computer hardware work less hard on this. And it just makes for a more smoother experience overall, right? If you know what you're doing and you know more about computer specs and how your system works and your internet speeds and everything, and you'll understand in detail, then I would say you can start playing around with it. Right. The next option below that says downscale, downscale filter. Let's not go into depth on what that actually means. This is more on videographers and the editing phase of things and just how things are, and the tech behind it. But stick with the default setting here, which is going to be bicubic. So I'm sure you can't read it, but it does say bicubic sharpen scaling 16 samples. Okay, I would say just stick with the default, and that's always going to be the setting that you want to use there. Common FPS values. This is again what we were talking about before during the video resolution part in the slide deck. This is where you set your frame rate, the common FPS value. Okay, so you want to stick with either 30 or 60. You'll see other frame rates listed here: 10, 20, 24 NTS, 25 for PAL, 29.97. Oh, that's a good thing to bring up. Is anybody from Europe or using PAL resources? I'm not. I think Canada is still on NTSC because it's North America, but Australia or Europe. So if you're from there, you're going to be using actually 25 or 50 because you're on a PAL system there. All right. For everyone else, you're going to be using NTSC. But I would recommend 30 or 60. Right. Okay. Any questions on the video section? Okay. And don't be afraid to, bring up anything, from the past sections too, if you have any questions. Okay, now I'm going back to the output section. Again, that's about 2 sections above the video section and the audio. So we're returning back to the output section because this one's a little more in depth here. And it's because that you should base it off of the other sections that we just talked about, the video and audio. All right. Whatever you set there is going to set the standards of what you are going to be streaming or recording with here. Okay. By default, okay, it's actually going to be on this simple mode. You can use this simple mode just to get your stream going if you want, but I don't recommend it because the simple mode usually has really bad quality streams. Right? So I advise to actually go over to the advanced mode. Okay. Now, in this advanced mode, you're going to see a couple of tabs here on the top. It first says streaming, and then the next tab is called recording. The next one is audio, and the last one is replay buffer. I won't talk about replay buffer because that's more an advanced feature, and you need actually a high-end spec computer to use it. So we're just going to talk about the first three, which is streaming, recording, and audio. Okay. Now, streaming. The streaming tab deals with everything that's being pushed to the stream itself. Okay. So the first one here is audio tracks. In OBS, this is probably makes more sense for the DJs here, but you can record up to 6 tracks, right? And they all can be separated as well. So they can be individually recorded and individually pushed out. And so you can turn on and off these tracks as well, right? That's for recording. Sorry, I should back up a little bit. That's the capabilities of audio tracks in OBS. But for streaming, the audio track here is which track you want to actually push out to the stream. And that can be only one. All right, so you have to choose one of the tracks. Usually the first one's fine, but for recording methods, you can have it all separated into different tracks. But you want everything combined into a single track for yourself. Okay, and I'll explain a little bit more on that as far as a use case on why you want to do that. Right? The encoder, which is right below that. Right, this section deals with what is being used to encode all of the video data information. Let me move this menu here. But everything that you see in black here, okay. Let's say, for example, hold on. Let me go back to this here real quick. I'm gonna close this real quick. Let me just put up an image, or actually, let me put up a browser. Actually, no. Let me just put up an image. Let's just say I have an image here, right? Okay. So again, the whole black screen is in 1080 or 720, but this image is here. And let's say on the side of it, I have also a video playing, and then maybe a web camera on here. Okay, so all that information, when we're talking about the encoder settings, let me go back, bring up the settings here, going back to output under the streaming tab, and again, under the audio track, the encoder section. This encoder is the hardware that's being used to encode or process all of this information in your canvas. All right, so this 1080 resolution or 720 resolution, whatever you're displaying on here, that hardware that's listed in the encoder is being used in order to encode, process all that information, and push it over to the stream. So it's a very important selection here that you have to make. All right. For me, I'm currently, like I said, I'm using a Windows operating system, but I'm on a MacBook. All right. So I'm actually using a 2017 MacBook Pro, fully decked out, but I use Boot Camp to use Windows on it. Okay. And when I do this, these are the selections that I have here. The first one is H.264 and AMD, because this computer uses a Radeon 580 RX graphics card built into it. All right. If you don't have a graphics card built into it, then the next selection here is called X264. And this X264 selection is actually only CPU based. So as mentioned before on the previous slide decks, you don't necessarily need a dedicated GPU or graphics card in order to stream with your computer. Okay, the X264 will actually use your CPU, right, which is your processor, your computer processor, in order to do the encoding. Okay, but again, you know, it's gonna heavily utilize your processor. So, you know, if you're using a low-end processor like an i3, you know, don't have a lot of things processing on your canvas, right? So maybe just have one webcam and some pictures or something, or maybe just two webcams and maybe an image here and there, but don't run like videos and several audio clips and some motion graphics. Motion is the one that hurts encoding the most. So if you have a bunch of videos and a bunch of webcams around, X264 is not gonna cut it. It'll be way too CPU intensive and it'll bog down your computer. And so very important setting, encoder. All right, if you have a dedicated GPU or dedicated graphics card, you want to select it here. If you don't, use X264 then, and that uses your CPU usage. Okay, rescale output. I don't recommend using it. Not right now, at least, if you're still testing and learning about OBS. Okay, this has to deal direct with the video. Okay, sorry about that. But this deals direct with the video section when I was saying the base canvas resolution and the output resolution here. Because they match, that's why I don't want you to use the rescale output. Okay, that's not needed. If you're going to rescale the output, it's best to do it in this video section here, because you have an output scaled resolution that you can set, and that'll get pushed out to the stream. Why they included it in this output section, it's actually an old feature, and a lot of people in the forums for OBS have been requesting to just put that out because it makes it very confusing. Like, why include that here in the streaming section when you can, it's better to, you know, they actually did a lot of tests under this, and it's better to just do the rescaling here in the video section rather than the output section. Okay, so just don't use it at all. Okay, now the confusing part. All right, so if that hasn't confused you enough, this one will probably confuse you the most. But before I go on, any questions so far? Again, feel free to interrupt me at any time. Okay, how are we doing on time here? All right, we're about an hour in here. So we're getting close. We're about halfway, so we're almost done with the settings section here. But again, the streaming section, from top to bottom, we're going to go under the rate control first. Okay. By default, it's set to CBR, which stands for constant bit rate. Okay. This is the control rate or the bit rate that's being pushed to the stream. Okay. This deals direct with your internet speeds. Okay. So again, before dialing in these settings, you need to run a speed test to find out what you need to use as far as this information here. Okay. Now, again, the rate control, CBR, stands for constant bit rate. Do not use it. Right? Just don't use it for streaming. Okay. Recording, yes. Actually, recording, maybe not. Rate control for streaming, you could use it. I don't recommend it unless you have a really good internet connection and are hardlined by Ethernet to your router, not Wi-Fi. Okay, Wi-Fi is fine. I'm actually using Wi-Fi right now to do things right now. So, you know, you can use Wi-Fi as long as you have a good connection and good speeds for Wi-Fi. But with rate control, I don't recommend it using CBR. I recommend you use VBR. So you're going to see a few options here. One's CBR, the next one's ABR, and then VBR, and then CRF. I don't want to go through all of them because they're very technical. The only two that you need to be concerned about is the default one that's selected, which is CBR. I don't recommend it for beginners. advanced users, you might want to play around with that. VBR, okay, variable bit rate. Okay, the reason why I want you to use variable bit rate is because any drop in internet speeds, and that can happen anytime. It actually happens all the time. All right, so if you go to that website speedtest.net, you'll see it fluctuate while it's running that test, and what displays at the end of the test is just a an average. It doesn't give you like the variables of how fast and how slow it actually goes, as time goes on. So those are just average numbers. All right. So with variable bit rate, it's actually taking into consideration on that. So it'll vary, and it'll try to reach the average bit rate that you state here. Okay, and that's why I want you to use it. If you use CBR again is for constant bit rate. It's gonna remain at that bit rate that you state, but if it ever dips below, then you get buffering, and so all your viewers, they have to buffer. Or what they'll see, for those that don't know what buffer is, their screen will just freeze until more data is being transferred over to the computer, and to reach that bit rate before it starts playing again. So that's why I don't want you to use CBR unless you're tried and proved on good connections and you can deliver at a CBR rate control. I don't recommend using it. All right, use VBR. Okay, VBR, right underneath that is the bit rate. So again, when we were on the slide deck, I set all the bit rate in that chart. This is where you state it. So it's rated at kbps, which is kilobytes per second. Okay, so it's not megabytes like the chart. It's rated at kilobytes per second here. Okay, so right now it reads by default settings 2500 kilobytes per second. In megabytes, that's 2.5 megabytes per second. Okay, this is very common. This is the default. This will get you decent quality. It won't get you the sharpness for 720 as per that chart is, because the chart that I mentioned requires at least a 3500 kilobytes per second or 3.5 megabytes like it says on the chart. Yeah, so per the chart on a 720 canvas, it's going to be 35 kilobytes per second that I state here. Okay, so with that being said, this again, depending on the resolution and the frame rate that you are going by, this is where you state the bit rate. Now, do you have to state exactly what it says on that chart? No. If you want something that's high quality, go a little bit higher, but test it. Okay. The one key thing about OBS is always run tests before you go through your live stream. Okay. Run a test, record it, see what it looks like, and see how the audio is, see if you're getting hiccups or anything. Because the best thing to do is, if you get any buffering or any kind of hiccups or stutters in image quality or audio quality, you want to lower this bit rate. Okay, so even though that 720, my recommendation was at 3500 kilobytes per second or 3.5 megabytes, if you still are getting some stuttering or audio issues or crackling, lower this down to 25. That's why the default was always set at 2500 kilobytes per second. Okay, because that one's almost like tried and proven that you stick with that, you'll be fine. Yeah, the quality might not be up to 720 quality, but at least it's sharp enough, and the image looks good enough for most viewers on stream. Okay, so again, look at the chart, follow the chart, and then set your bit rates here. We won't worry about the next section, which is use custom buffer size. That's more for advanced users. So is the CRF. Just whatever the CRF is on default, keep it at that. It's more for an advanced user, and that's not what we're here for. However, the next one is required by Twitch, YouTube, Facebook Live, any other live streaming platform. By default, I don't know why they haven't changed this yet. There could be other reasons why, but do not leave it at 0. The keyframe interval needs to be set at 2. Okay, this goes for every streaming platform that I use, and I've used quite a few, but always set it to 2. Next is the CPU usage preset. Default's okay. This deals direct with the quality, again, of the overall stream. Not only is it the bitrate, but this CPU usage preset. And without going to, a deep dive on the technical reasons of this use here, let's just say that the faster, the less intensive your computer or your CPU or your processor is being used to encode everything, including the GPU, but the quality goes down. So by default, it says very fast. And if you look at this selection from top to bottom, it states ultra fast, super fast, very fast, which is the default, faster, fast, medium, slow, slower, very slow, and placebo. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but there's a lot of selections here. And as I mentioned, the faster, the worse the quality. The slower, the better quality, but more high CPU intensive. Okay, so if your CPU is struggling, you might want to choose something faster. Very fast is a very common one that everybody uses. Again, it's the default, so if you want to leave it there, that's fine. Most gamers and people that actually trying to push out quality streams with high-end cameras will always probably push it up to faster or fast. But it is dependent on your computer specs. So you should have a pretty high-end computer if you want to start pushing that quality any higher. But for most people, very fast is more than capable, and the quality is still great. Anything below that, you're starting to risk a little bit less quality or color saturations and stuff. But it's not meaning that the quality is bad. You can use it. I just don't recommend using the last one, which is the ultra fast. That one is if your computer is just really struggling over everything. Go ahead and use that. Okay, but you'll be fine with very fast. Profile. Use main. Don't ask me why. I won't go into the technical details. Just use main. And tune. Keep it off. This just kind of puts over, for people that know much about videography, the tune is more of like filters. You could put some grain on it, some animations. It deals a little bit more in depth than just filtration, but that's kind of the gist of it. In my opinion, just don't use it. There's better ways of putting any kind of filtrations over your stream and stuff. Okay, the last one is X264 options. This is only for advanced users, so just don't use it. Okay, that takes care of the stream settings. Any questions so far?
Real quick question.
Sure.
The profile setting, did you say select main?
Correct. Just main.
Okay. All right, cool. All right. I'm kind of doing it as you go. So,
yes.
I'm saying my stuff now, so it's all good. Okay.
Cool. Yep. Sounds good. All right. And again, don't worry. As time moves on in this group, if you want to stay in the group and just watch and follow the post, I'll start posting more stuff about these settings, what you should be using, and I'm currently trying to make YouTube videos for this too. But I wanted to, again, this webinar is helpful for you guys so that you can ask questions and really kind of learn it through here. All right. Okay. Move into the next tab. Again, we're going to stick in the output section and we're going over to the recording tab at the top. Okay. Again, I'm not going to go in depth here. There's a lot of information here. Okay. We can tackle the advanced sections of these things at a later time, right? But we're just going to go over the basics. Okay. So again, starting from the top down, type. It's standard. Just stick with standard. All right. I'm not gonna go into FFmpeg. Those that are videographers know what FFmpeg is and how to use it and stuff. Have at it. All right. But for most users, just use standard. All right. Just don't even touch that custom output. Recording path. I always record to an external hard drive. Most people will think that, oh, it's going to struggle, I'll have problems. No, this is actually the preferred method. If you record locally, you're eating up a lot of your hard drive space that's local, and you could run in out of room, because recording, you can set a much higher quality standard than what you're streaming, so that you can post it to YouTube later, or maybe even make video edits. Okay, so a lot of people, especially the YouTube content creators, they actually use OBS a lot to do recording, not necessarily streaming. They're not even streaming, they're just using it to record their screen, because they want to record at the most high quality as possible while adding audio over and doing animations and stuff all in real time, so that they don't have to handle editing so much, and they can just do it all in live and in real time. All right, so it's best to use an external hard drive. You don't have to, but it's best to, because you have more room to record there, especially at higher qualities. Okay, but that's where you set the recording path. There's a checkbox there to generate file name without space. That's up to you. Recording format is the next one. Okay, there's two recording formats that I want you to be aware of. The first one, I believe, is the default one, which is MP4. I'm sure most of you guys know what MP4 is. It's almost like a universal file format for video. That is the basic one. So if you don't want to have to deal with high quality stuff or worry about different audio tracks being recorded and separating them, MP4 is fine. All right, you can use it. For those that want to get a little more technical, MKV, and there's really just one reason why you would want to use MKV over MP4, and that's the audio tracks. So for you DJs, this is probably where I think a good portion that I've seen in other DJ Facebook groups are wondering how they can remove what they say on the microphone because they want to record their mix. And then they try to use Serato, but then their microphone is plugged in and then they can't separate it. And, there's all kinds of audio messes when you're mixing in other audio sources during your stream. This is where the magic happens for it. All right. So I'll show you later in this video when we get to the interface section on how to separate your audio in the tracks. But you can select the tracks here. All right. Again, the first track here is going to be saved for the stream itself, so you don't want to touch that one. You want to make sure that one's checked. But if you tick through it, you'll notice that you can have multiple selected or just one or a few of them. All right, so you can select whatever tracks you want, 1, 2, 3. Maybe you just want 1 and 3, 4, 5, but this is all dealing with the recording itself. Okay, and then when you bring it over to an editing software like Premiere, Final Cut, even I forgot which free Windows ones, but there's a lot of video editing software out there that can read it now in their different tracks, and you can separate them and delete the tracks, or maybe just include them on one versus the other when you're actually doing video editing after the fact. Okay, so this is where you want to set those standards as far as which tracks you want to have recorded. In most cases, you can just leave all 6 selected and not even worry about it, especially for those that aren't even going to be worried about and just use MP4. Just have all 6 selected. You won't see a difference on the file or anything, and it won't create a larger file either. So having all 6 selected is fine, but if you want to be more specific about it, you can select it here on actually which tracks are actually being recorded. All right. Any questions on that before I go on? All right. right below that, we have the encoder. So the encoder, again, just like the streaming tab, this is different. This is the encoder for the recording. So recording also takes encoder requirements, all right? So this again is going to be really dependent on your computer specs, on whether you can handle it or not, all right? So if I go back here to the streaming tab and I'm using X264, let me select it. X264 for the encoder here. Again, X264 is for CPU only for encoding. And again, that's for the stream. In my recording, if I have a dedicated GPU, then I can use that here. And the reason why you want to separate that, if you're doing both streaming and recording at the same time, you want to separate those two because one's going to take the heavy load. And usually your recording session is what you want to have at a higher quality than your stream, right? Because that's something that you're going to post at a later time. So with the encoder, I would suggest if you have an external GPU or a GPU card for this, this is where you select it. All right. If you're only using if you don't have a computer that doesn't have a graphics card built in, I don't recommend you doing recording at the same time. You're gonna need it, right? Or else it's gonna be really, pretty intensive on your computer. Excuse me. For DJs, I know most of you guys don't have dual PC setups. This is where things start getting a little fishy, because I know you need a computer for Serato or whatever else you're using. If you're using Native Instruments, Tractor, or Record Box or whatnot, you're gonna need that computer for that, and that's already gonna be using a lot of computer resources. So get at me at a later time if you want to learn about dual CPU setups and why to use them, or if you can do it all on yours. Right? I stream and record and use Serato on my streams, all on my computer, but I paid a hefty amount for my MacBook. All right, so I fully ducked it out. Okay, so I won't go too much more in depth on encoding because I already went over it on streaming. The next one below that is the rescale output. Again, I don't recommend it. Just do that in the video section in the settings. So just don't use it. Custom muxer settings, that's more for advanced users. I won't go into that, but you can. Well, if you know much about muxer and how to, I won't go into it here. If you have questions on that, just ask me later. And then the little box behind, below all of that. All right, these are going to be the settings for your recording quality. Okay. The first one is a preset. You can use this preset. It's fine. Most people do, because it's kind of a little bit of troublesome to kind of understand all these settings for recording. But some of them is similar to the stream section. All right. So starting from the top bottom, if you drop down the preset menu there's restore default settings, but by default it's set to recording. Right. The next one below that is high quality recording, and then we got indistinguishable recording, near lossless recording, Twitch streaming, and YouTube streaming. Right. They're not in an order like in the streaming section, so let me go over them one by one. Right. First off, the default one, again, which is recording. The one above it, just don't select it because it's going to reset everything. Unless you really want to reset everything in this recording tab, you can select that one. But the recording section, the recording preset, that's if you only going to be recording. Okay, so if you're only recording, that's going to be a good standard or a base to use, right? The next one below it is high quality recording. This is more for if you're gonna do light editing work when you're done recording. And what I mean by editing work is if you're gonna bring it into a video editing software and do a little bit of work in there, and maybe even bump up the quality a little bit, maybe put a filter on it or something, or change the exposure a little bit. All right, that's what you want to use if you're going to be doing that kind of editing on it. But the next two below it indistinguishable and near lossless recording. If you are a true professional video editor, use those. All right, don't use high quality. If you're a true professional, you want to use the other ones, the indistinguishable recording and near lossless recording. But just know your data files are going to be huge. All right, so make sure you have a lot of hard drive space to support that. Do we have a question? Just want to make sure. It sounded like someone wanted to ask a question. Okay. And then the last two at the bottom here, we have Twitch streaming and YouTube streaming. Why is my volume always going different here? Hopefully you guys can still hear me. If you guys can't, let me know. Twitch streaming and YouTube streaming are the last two. These is if you want to record, but don't necessarily care too much about the quality of it and more concerned about the stream. Okay, so these are more focused on, yes, I'm streaming and recording at the same time, but I'm just recording because I just want some kind of, backup to my stream. All right, but I want you to focus on the stream and not on the recording. So that's what you want to use there. So again, make sure you're using. Get down and boogie, oogie, oogie. Oops, can we have everybody muted? Check your mics, please. Okay, so again, Twitch and YouTube streaming. Use those if you want to focus your computer on streaming and not recording, but still need to do both. Okay. Okay, moving on. Quality preset. All right, quality preset right underneath it. You have balanced, speed, or quality. My suggestion is use balanced. Okay. Let me pause here real quick. Can we have everybody check your mics again, please? We have someone unmuted there. Okay, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry about that. Okay. So again, quality preset. And when you hover some of these things on the question marks, they kind of give you a little tooltip here. And they kind of discuss what's the best options for you there. But on this quality preset, balance, speed, and quality. So if your most concerned is about speed and not quality, speed meaning how slow your computer is and you need to have it run well, then you choose speed, because you need that speed and not focused on quality so that your computer can run everything. So it's going to kind of lower all the specs and lower all the data rates and everything for you in order for your computer to be able to run all of that. Okay, and this is for the recording section, right? Quality, obviously it's going to take over quality. It's going to, it's going to be focused on that, and it will take longer for the encoder, which is either your GPU or your processor, to manage all that. So in fact, what happens is if you choose quality at the end of OBS, when you hit stop recording, don't turn off OBS, because what happens is it's choosing quality, so it's taking a lot longer to process everything. And even though that you hit stop recording and it stopped your actual recording of whatever you're doing in OBS, it's continuously processing all that data, and it may take a few minutes before it stops. So just don't shut down OBS until you see a little pop-up window appear that it says, okay, recording has been saved and you can close out OBS. All right. But my suggestion is use balanced. Balance is a good thing unless you're only doing recording. If you're just doing recording, then quality is a great option to use. Speed is if you're doing both streaming and recording at the same time and your computer is struggling. Right, so balance is actually a good default to use there. Rate control method, it's usually blacked out unless you actually go through some advanced features, so I won't go through that. Pre-pass mode, don't use it. That's why it's defaulted to disabled unless you're an advanced user. And then target bit rate, peak bit rate, keyframe interval. Okay. This, unlike the stream tab, is a little different, right? This one deals with more variable bitrate at this point, okay? And what happens is on a target bitrate, that's the target it's gonna try to hit as far as the bitrate. Again, bitrate controls the the data, the megabytes or kilobytes of information for the videos. So it's gonna affect quality, color, saturations, contrast, etc., everything that has to deal with the video of it all. Okay, so it's just the amount of data it's going to be saved for all that information. And right now, the default setting for a recording preset is set for 10,000 kilobytes per second. So that's 10 megabytes per second. Okay, much more than the stream. All right, and that's just to improve quality. So if that's the default, let's just say that you're at 1080, you're streaming at 1080 at actually 10,000 is not even good for that. 10,000 is probably good for 720 30 frames. So if you're streaming at 3.5 megabytes per second on a stream at 720 30 frames, imagine what it would be with 10,000 megabytes, or I'm sorry, 10 megabytes per second for recording. So that's how much more I'm sorry, that's how much more data is being saved for the overall quality of 720 30 frames. And that's usually a good basis right there. 10,000 is a good base to use for 720 30. And then everything goes up from there. But we won't go too in depth on that. There's a lot of charts that you can actually Google search that gives you some different settings that you can use there. But test it, right? Everybody tests it because it's always going to be different on everybody's computers on what they're capable of doing. Now, the peak bitrate, and I don't know why they do this here as far as the default. The default's set to 8,000, which is only 8 megabytes per second. It actually shouldn't be lower, which is weird because the peak rate is going to be the peak limitation of it. Why would you set it at 8 megabytes when your target bit rate's at 10 megabytes? Okay, the peak bit rate should actually be higher, right? Unless I'm misunderstanding how they're using this. Most people that I've seen, their peak bit rate is always going to be a little bit higher. So the target may be 10,000, but my peak may be at 11,000, which is 11 megabytes. All right, so that's as high as it's gonna go. All right, it's gonna attempt to maximize the peak. Oh, that's what it is. Okay, I didn't know they put a little when you hover over the field, it gives you a little clue here. Bitrate to attempt to maximally peak to the overall sequence. And then the target bitrate. Bitrate to attempt to achieve the overall sequence. That's why it's lower. Okay, so I think of it in reverse of what I just said. Target bitrate is going to be more the overall maximum that it's going to try to achieve. So it's going to try to push to 10,000 or 10 megabytes. So it's obvious it's going to fluctuate, and that's why the peak bitrate is actually what it's going to always try to stay at. So it's always going to try to stay at 8 megabytes, but if it can push to 10 megabytes, it's going to push to that 10 megabytes. All right, so that's why the target bitrate is higher. Okay, so just to bring things into full circle, target bitrate is going to be what you want it to try to push to at all times, but knowing that it's going to fluctuate. The peak bitrate is going to be what it's always going to attempt to stay at and be consistent with. So it's going to be consistent at 8 megabytes, but its target is at 10 megabytes. So if there's room for additional megabytes to get up to 10, it will do it. Okay. And then keyframe interval. Keep it at 2 again, just like streaming. The keyframe interval, unless you know what it's used for and why you want to change it, I don't recommend you change it off of 2. Right. And just an FYI, there are reasons why you'd want to change it, but it's more for advanced editors and stuff. Okay, view mode, which is right below it. Keep it at basic. Unless you're an advanced user, you can try to view some of the other modes, but it gives you a ton of other options to select and change around there. Just don't use it. I don't use it. It's just way too much in depth and not what I would be using OBS for in the first place. Okay. Excuse me. The last section, which will be very short here. Audio. The audio tab, again, we're still in the output section. If you just scroll back to the top, we're going to go over to the audio tab. Here you can just set the bit rate for all the tracks. Again, it's going to be tracks 1 through 6. So again, if we look at the streaming section, I have audio track 1 selected. In the recording tab, I have audio tracks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 selected. So all 6 are going to be recorded. Back to the streaming again, only track 1 is going to be pushed to the stream. So if I go back to the audio tab, this is where I can set the bit rates for every track, 1 through 6. The stream, I recommend to only push 160. You could essentially, use the others if you really wanted to, but you better have some good internet speeds, all right? Especially if you're trying to do a lot of animations and video work along with your stream, okay? The highest that I recommend, because it really doesn't make a difference on a stream. I don't care how good your ears are, unless you're a true music genius or producer, you're not going to hear the difference. But you can go to 192, right? I know a lot of DJs are going to want to push to 320, but to me, it doesn't. I mean, it's a stream. They're not going to be recording it and playing it back and editing it and stuff. Just don't use it. You're just going to ask for headaches later on as far as being able to stream at those high audio bit rates. All right. 192 at the highest. All right. I don't even use it. 160 sounds clean and good to me, especially for gaming and hearing all those booms and gun noises and explosions. 160 is good. Now, when I'm recording though, all right, especially if it's something that I want to record in high quality and make a lot of filtration and edits in the audio, I can set the bit rates on the recording tracks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to a higher bit rate. And I always do it at either 256 or 320. Excuse me. Okay, so 320, high quality, especially, that's like wave range right there, especially if you're pushing in wave content or like, true audio, mics and stuff like that. You do want that high audio bit rate. So 320 is good, great, high, very high data usage though. So make sure you have a lot of hard drive space to support that. If not, 256 is good to go, or even like I said, 192. If you just want to be able to play it back and still have high quality, 192 is great. To be honest, Spotify, Apple Music, all those streaming services, what you hear is not, it might be recorded in 320 or 256, but they're not pushing that content to you in that bit rate. They're pushing it way below 160, but they have a lot of technology behind it in order to, achieve good quality. But I guarantee you, you won't notice the difference between 160 on your stream versus something like on Apple Music or Spotify. Okay, so again, you can set the bit rate there. All right. Now, before you move on to all these other tabs here, whenever you move off of one of these sections on the left side, general, stream, output, audio, video, before you move off that tab, because it always can reset when you go to a different section, click on the apply button on the bottom right, okay, or else it won't save it. Okay, last section on the settings. Hotkeys. you can set hotkeys. This is true with MIDI mapping too. Actually, strike that. Not entirely true with MIDI mapping. There's some plugins that you'll have to install in order to support MIDI mapping. Easy to install. It's just a matter of downloading and installing it. And then you'll be able to use MIDI map keystrokes in here for the hotkeys. Okay, but you can set hotkeys on your normal keyboard if you want here. Even all your F buttons or your function buttons, numpads, they're all programmable here. Okay, that deals with the settings sections. Any questions? I know we're going on a little over an hour here, but hopefully the rest of the section will be pretty quick as far as this user interface here. There's not much to it. It's more about creativity here. All right. Okay, so let's get down to the user interface here. So what you see here in black, again, is the entire canvas. So if you set it to 720, it's going to be a 720 canvas here. If it's 1080, it's going to be a 1080 canvas. Anything higher, I just don't recommend streaming. Don't even bother trying to stream at 2K or 4K. Right? 1080 or 720 is good. Or even Instagram. All right. So I actually posted in the Facebook group if you want to learn how to set the canvas straight for Instagram. So you can use this for Instagram as well. Okay, so let's talk about this canvas. Again, this is just like any other canvas. If you're an art major or if you know about art, the canvas is where you do all your work and what you want to display. You can move objects, you can resize them through these corners. You can flip them, you can rotate them. If you right click on the image, you see all these options for it. Filters, properties, and we'll go over what all that means in a minute. But just know, just like Photoshop or anything, most of those options are all available for you here in OBS, okay? The basics at least. Okay? You can't do special things like selections and stuff, but for the basics, as far as resizing, rotating, cropping, filters, change what it looks like a little bit, it's all here for you. Okay. So that's the canvas. Right below it, though, you'll have all these boxes. Okay, and they may look a little different, or maybe a little different in their order. But I'm actually going to start from the right to the left instead of left to right. Okay, so on the right side here, you have controls. Starting from the top to bottom, it says start streaming. Then we have start recording. Then we have start virtual camera, which I will show you and let you know what that means in the tips and tricks section. Studio mode, and again, that's another feature that I'll show you in the tips and tricks section. Your settings. So what we just went over, this is where you find the settings area if you don't go to the top right area to find the preferences or settings. This is an easier button to, go to for your settings. And then exit. All right, so pretty simple on the controls. That's basically where you want to go to either start and stop your streaming or your stream, or start and stop your recording. Just note that once you click on start streaming or start recording, the button's going to change and it'll say stop streaming or stop recording. So it'll be the same button that you'll need to click again in order to stop. Okay, the next one to the left is scene transitions. Scene transitions, in short, is gonna be, I'm gonna have to create a scene here real quick here for you. But in short, it's basically switching between two different scenes. Oh, that's not what I wanted. And let me demonstrate that here for you. I want a video capture. And we'll just put my face up here. Okay, so basically what happens is whatever selection you have down here under the scene transitions, right now it's selected to fade. I can have it to cut, fade. You won't see move here. This is actually a plugin that I installed. It does different things here. But there's also stinger transitions. You can click on the cogwheel next to the drop down menu. Ooh, it's not working. That's weird. Looks like that's a bug. I'm supposed to be able to click on that and select other filters or transitions, I should say. But looks like that might be a bug. Okay, but for the most part, most people just use cut or fade anyways. Right? You can actually install other transitions as well. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to click on fade. It's set right now. You can set the duration of the fade, which is, for me, it's going to be 1,000 milliseconds, which is equal to 1 second. You can change it to 500, which would be half a second. All right, but this one's 4,000. So if I go all the way to the left box here under my scenes, again, this is a scene transition. Right now I'm on scene 2. If I click on scene 1, you'll see that the base canvas changes. Okay, so it changes with that 1 second fade. All right, so that's how that transition area works. Okay, next we have the audio mixer. Okay, just like any other audio mixer, if you're familiar with what an audio mixer is, that's what it is here. I can expand it a little bit just to show more. There's nothing there. Right now, I only have my desktop audio and the video capture device, which is my webcam that I'm showing here. So it's reading, OBS is reading my video cam because there's actually an internal mic on it that I can use as another audio source and set it here. And that's why it's appearing in the audio mixer. Now, if I add a microphone, let's just add my microphone. I'm going to go back to my settings real quick. The audio section, I'm going to add a mic here. And I'm going to add my USB mic that I'm using. You'll see that it's now added here under the mic aux. And you'll see the levels all here. You can adjust this so that it's not so loud to the stream, but by default you won't hear it. Okay. Actually, in fact, unless it's something that's that you can listen on your desktop, you typically won't hear anything on here, at least not through OBS. All right. If you actually click on the cogwheel on the bottom and select advanced audio properties, you can actually select here under audio monitoring for that mic channel and actually select to monitor it. Now, what happens here is that now you'll be able to listen and to see what it sounds like through here. All right. There's some other settings here in the advanced audio section that I wanted to talk about real quick. This is also where you can set the tracks. All right. So each audio source that's here in the audio mixer is where you can set the tracks that you want either recorded or to the stream. So if you remember when we were in the settings, track 1 was being used for the stream. So let's say, for example, I don't want my desktop audio to go to the stream, but I do want my mic. I can uncheck desktop audio track 1 so that nobody hears what's happening on my desktop audio except myself. So let's say I get notifications, ringtones and stuff, or a call, and it appears on my screen during my stream, but I don't want my stream audience to hear it. Just make sure that's unchecked for track 1, because track 1 is being sent to the stream and they'll never hear it. Right? Same thing with anything else that happens to the desktop, because again, track 1 is for the desktop audio. Right? But in most cases, you're gonna, most people have it checked off anyways. What the real use for this, and a lot of other people use it for, is more for the tracks, right? To separate the tracks, this is the important thing that you need to do. Because remember, in the recording, I'm recording everything from track 1 through 6. But I have 3 audio sources here. So in order for me to separate the tracks, I need to assign each of these audio sources to their individual tracks. Because if I leave all of these checked, then it's going to record that audio source to all 6 tracks. And then it's not separated because everything is being selected here, right? So this is how I would set it up. If I want the stream on track 1, and again, you can have that all recorded and still record it on a track 1, which is fine. That's how most people do it. You know, you record track 1 so that they're all together. You don't have to, you know, go into editing to place them all together. Just have them all checked here for track 1, because it gets pushed to the stream anyway. That's exactly how everybody on the stream will hear it. But in track 2, I only want my desktop audio. So I'm going to uncheck the rest of them, 3, 4, 5, and 6, so that it doesn't get recorded to those tracks. Then the mic channel, which is the one right below it, I'm going to deselect 2 because I don't want it to record over the desktop audio track, because the desktop audio track is on 2. So I'm going to uncheck the mic channel 2. Keep track 3 because I want the mic to record on track 3, but deselect 4, 5, and 6. And then the video capture device. Let's just say I want to use the, you know, the microphone that's built into my webcam to also record. Maybe I want it to record ambient sounds that are happening in the room. Maybe there's some cheers from the crowd that I want to record separately using that microphone. That's another thing that is great. And then you can edit that, because maybe it might be too loud during the recording, but you want to edit it during your editing process and just kind of lower the volume on that, right? Without affecting all the other channels. So that's why you'd want to do something like that and use that kind of recording method. So again, I need to have it still checked on track 1, because again, track 1 is to the stream. But I'm going to uncheck 2 because 2 was for the desktop audio. I'm going to uncheck 3 because that's for the mic channel or my USB mic. But I'm going to keep 4 selected, so it's on, again, it's on its other on its separated track. And then I'll deselect 5 and 6 because it's not even being used anyways. So that's what it looks like. All 3 are checked for track 1 because that's being pushed to the stream, but it also gets recorded on track 1 because I'm recording it. And I can just use that simply as the single track for everything. But track 2 is used, and it is only going to be used to record the desktop audio. Track 3 is only going to be recording whatever comes out of my microphone. Right? And track 4 is going to be used only to capture my microphone on my webcam. All right, so that's how you separate audio tracks in here. Very useful for DJs, especially if you're, and very, very useful for dance events if you're using multiple camera sources with multiple, you know, audio or microphones on each camera. All right, great way to separate audio using this advanced feature. Okay, that's enough with the audio mixer. Let's go into the fun stuff now. Scenes and sources, which is scenes is on the left, sources is right next to it. Scenes, you kind of, again, this is what you want to use to transition between 2 things. Okay. Sources is the actual sources on the canvas itself. You'll notice plus and minus icons at the bottom of the screens for each box, the scenes and sources. I'm going to go back to scene 1 here. And in this source here, I just have an image. So I can have an image here. I can push this off to the side. And then we can do, sorry, I'm kind of not prepared on opening or designing stuff here. But again, this is the creative aspect of things. If you click on the plus sign under sources, you'll have a bunch of lists here, or a bunch of icons on different things that you can add to your canvas. Okay. Let's go over each one because each one does a different thing and they all serve different purposes. All right, so in order to design something on your canvas here, you need to know what all of it does. All right. I'm not going to go into the audio stuff, and I'm not going to go into some of these special plugins that I've installed for my own personal use. If you want to learn more about that stuff, just hit me up after this webinar, and we can kind of discuss some other features and everything. Right. As far as the audio input and capture, audio output capture, it just basically does that. It's audio stuff. If you want to put other inputs or output captures, right? You do need other external gears in order to use the output capture though, right? So if you don't have other output captures like mixers, audio interfaces, basically stuff that you would use in a recording studio, this stuff wouldn't apply to you. Audio input capture is just like a microphone, right? So you can actually use this here to control the sources for it too, right? Audio visualizer is a plugin. I won't go over that. Browser. Browser, I'm actually going to show you during the tips and tricks, but it's not the browser that you think of. So if I click on browser, it's usually going to ask me to create new or add from an existing. I'll explain that in a minute here, but you can always rename it here. For now, I'm going to keep it named as browser. I'm going to click OK. And by default, it's going to show an OBS project website, right? But basically, you can show whatever website here because the first field here says URL. So you can input any URL that you want and for it to display always here, even though that you do not have a browser opened, right? So it's basically a browser that you can input here. So I can just put, let's say, YouTube. Just know you have to have the HTTPS or HTTP logged in there. And oops. Okay, so that's the URL. You can specify the width and height if you want to know the width and height of it. Different frame rates for it. Control audio via OBS. So this browser source, if it has its own audio, you can control it here. All right, I'm gonna check it off because I'm going to a YouTube site, so yeah, I might be playing some videos off of there. So yes, I do want to check that off and be able to control the volume. You don't have to because the desktop audio can be used to control it too, which is already here on my mixer, and that's the desktop audio. But here on YouTube, I can actually have a separate control for just that browser. Okay. And then some other features that you can kind of play around with here. Just shut down source when it's not visible. It's more of an advanced feature. Refresh browser when scenes become active. Another more advanced feature. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you can see it brings up YouTube. Okay, without even me having another browser open right now. It just automatically goes to that website. And then again, I can resize it however I want. It is remaining in that 800 by 600 field that I specified. So you can see here. And I can take it off canvas or not. Okay. Another thing to keep in mind here is layers. So if you know anything about Photoshop, everything is based off layers here. As you can see, the browser is on top of the image. So if I bring this image behind it, it's going to be hidden. So just know under here in sources, whatever is on top is going to be what's on top of the layers, right? So that since the image is below the browser here in the menu, it's going to appear that way here on the canvas. So if I want the image on top of the browser, I got to click and drag it above the browser. And now I can layer the image on top of the browser. All right. This goes true for almost everything under sources. So any of these other selections that you'll be making, it stays true as far as these layers are concerned. Okay. Next on this list here, when you're adding sources, color source. All right. Color source is just a plain color that you want to add. Right. So if I want to add another color source here, I can add a white box. I can add all kinds of different colors. If I just select that select color, I can add a purple one here. All right, I can specify the width and the height of it if I want. And if I click OK, now I can resize it any which way I want. If I hold the Shift key, it'll actually resize itself. So maybe I want a border behind all of this. So let's actually make something here real quick. My mouse is a little funny. So let's put this in the back. Oop. Okay, again, that purple source is on the top, so I'm going to bring that all the way down to the bottom so it appears on the bottom. But I'm going to resize the browser for YouTube. And maybe the image might be flying there too. Let's bring this over a little bit. Oh, it stretches it. Oh, let's do this. We'll get to the other ones. Okay, next. Display capture. Okay, basically, it's what it is. It's capturing the entire, monitor, whatever you see on your screen or your monitor. So from top to bottom, left to right, captures everything, exactly what's on the monitor. Okay, and as you can see, it'll show my windows. Again, I'm not using this. I'm using Streamlabs OBS, which is another version of OBS to conduct this webinar. But you can see here that it basically captures everything here. But this is what I'm using to show you everything. All right, just with a different version of OBS. I'm not gonna add that, so I can cancel that. And then I can delete it. So just by the plus button, you can hit the minus button when you have that source selected, and you can, oops, I deleted the wrong one. Display capture, yes, and you can delete it. I deleted the color source, sorry about that. Let me add it again. Okay, moving on. That was display capture. Game capture. Don't use it unless you're into gaming. All right, if you're a gamer, this is the preferred one to use instead of display capture. All right, so if you're trying to stream games, instead of using display capture, use game capture. Works exactly the same way display capture does. All it does is that it actually auto searches for a game instead of just a display. All right, so use game capture for gaming. Image, that's exactly this one here. The picture of a mixer here. So again, I demonstrated that earlier. All you got to do is just find the path of the image and you can resize it in those properties. And also you can always double click on any of these sources to go back to the properties window where you're specifying. So I can go ahead and change this if I wanted to, browse for a different image and select it here. Next, image slideshow. This one's kind of cool. With an image slideshow, you have all of the settings here of basically creating a slideshow if you want. The trick to this is, though, it does not support video. So don't expect it to work with video files, only image files, right? This is where you can set everything from slide mode, where it automatically, conducts the slideshow, or you can manually use hotkeys to move along, just like a slide deck, like a Google Slides or a PowerPoint presentation, where you can manually control it. Same thing, you can do that here too. Transition, you can set the parameters of the transition of the slideshow, the amount of time between the slides as far as the transition is concerned. You can loop it, so if you just want, for DJs, it would be cool. I've seen some DJs use it for rotating some images that they want. Maybe on the background they have like an image of a TV back there, and then on that TV they have the slideshow happening, just looping different images on that TV in their background. Okay. bounding box, just some other features here, random playback, hide when done. And then down here, the most important one is the image files. So this is where you're going to click on the plus button to kind of add files in their different paths, or a directory or a folder. Right? Add directory means add a folder. So you can clump all your images into one folder here that you select, you know, and then it'll just read all the images from that folder. Or you can add individual ones, right? So if you add files, you can select individual files. Again, only images. Okay. Sorry, my allergies is kind of kicking in here. Next one, Intel. Oh, this is a plugin. I won't go over that. Media source, video files. That's what that is, media source. So I'm gonna add that. I don't know if I have any media files here. I can click on the browse button. Do I have anything under downloads? Nope. Videos. Oh, I have my old. This is a video of my event that I threw about 3 or 4 months ago. So I can have that. I can add that. Again, you have some checkboxes that here that you can choose: looping, restarts, whatnot. The speed, you can even control the speed of the video and how it plays. So whether it plays normal or slow-mo or super fast. And then some color ranges. So again, I selected the file. Oh, it's an MKV file. I don't know if it's gonna play it. Oh, it did. Oh, wait, did it do it? No, it didn't. Yeah, it's not gonna play it. It's a different file format. All right. Let me see if I could find an actual. Oh wait, does it? I don't think it does. Yeah, it's not gonna do it. Okay, let me. I don't think I have another one. I don't. Okay, sorry about that. So I can't demonstrate that because I don't have a video to display here. Okay, but yeah, so that's what you want to select anyways if you want. Again, it'll just appear like how it does here in the image, just a little window here, and you can resize it however you want, and you can set it where it automatically loops or just automatically plays, you know, at any time. You even will have controls. So when you have it selected here, you can see a little stop button right here. You can play it at any time that you want. So maybe you just want it to appear but not play right away, and then you can play it at your discretion. Okay, so you have full controls over the video that's displayed here and how to display it. Yeah, let me remove that though first. Next, NDI source is a plugin. I won't go over that. Scene, so I won't go over that. So that's more of an advanced feature. Shader is a plugin. Source mirror is a plugin. Text. All right, here's another common one that a lot of people use. You can add text here. All right, you can. There's a lot of advanced features. I'm just gonna go over the basics on text, but for the basic use of it, you can select what fonts are built into your computer here. I'm just gonna use here. I'll use one of my old ones here. And that's 72. So I chose a font. I can write my name. I can transform the text if I wanted to, uppercase or lowercase. I can change the color by selecting it here. I'm going to keep it white though, but you'll see I can change it to red if I wanted to and click OK. But let's keep it at white. Alignments, background capacity or opacity, alignments, outlines. I can outline it if I wanted to. Let's actually do that. I'm going to add an outline of black so that it's legible over white sources. And there you go. So once I clicked OK, it appears here. Same thing like other sources. I can resize it if I wanted to. All right. But this is good for, like, you know, naming your instructors or whatever. If you have multiple cameras and naming what that camera is for, right? Very useful tool. Okay. Going down the list, video capture device. Those are webcams. Okay. So I'm gonna choose a webcam here. Oh, actually, I'm gonna do this. Let me delete that. Okay, so video capture device. You'll see here that there's an add existing because in my other scene I have it already selected. I can add the existing one and select that video capture device and click OK, and here it appears. All right. So again, this is that same one that I'm using on the other scene, and we'll go over that in a minute here. But I can put that off the size and resize it. All right. But that's video capture devices. Basically, webcams, any other webcam source that you can plug into your computer. So if you have video webcam capture cards or devices that are recognized as webcams, those will all be there, right? And last in this is window capture. Window capture, let's say you don't want the whole browser or something. Let's say I have Spotify open. These are applications that I want to capture. So I can click on it, and under window, I can select Spotify, and it'll show my Spotify screen. So these are any apps that actually appear or that you have opened already. They have to be open in order for them to appear in that list. So you can have them listed here and shown here. All right. So those are sources. Now, as you can see, I still have source scene 2 here on the left. But if I click on it, it goes back just to my webcam. And then I have other sources that I can build. So you can see that the scenes will be, you can design different scenes for different things. And you can always go back and forth in between them all. Okay. I'm going to take a quick 1-minute break real quick to use the bathroom. Sorry about that. Feel free to use the bathroom if you need to. But I've been kind of holding it a little bit here, but sorry about that. Give me 1 minute and I'll be back. Okay, my apologies. Okay, so just to move on before I start asking questions here, or taking questions. Again, the scenes section is just for you to build different scenes with different sources, right? And you can switch over back and forth between them all. Okay. So, are there any questions with any of this parts yet? The scenes, the sources, because from here on out, I'm gonna show you a couple of tips and tricks on how to use this for some of your use cases here. It looks like we've lost quite a few people here. There's only 4 left. Okay, so last bit here, some tips and tricks. Now, I don't think I'm gonna build another scene here. the first trick I wanted to show you is multiple cameras. All right, I'm gonna click on adding another scene. And the first one I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a video capture device, but I'm gonna add the existing one. So this is camera 1. Okay, so this can be camera 1 here. And then I'm gonna add a second camera source, which I hope it does it, but I'm using it right now for Facebook Rooms. But let's see if it can recognize it. Oh, it's not. Okay, unfortunately, because I'm using it as another webcam, it's not recognizing it. But what I can demonstrate is basically what you can do, and it's unfortunate I can't really demonstrate it, but I can duplicate this. And this would be useful for dance instructors or even just DJs if you want to, if you have access to 2 webcams. You know, and just resize them in any way that you want. And for example, you know, this left screen can be used for, you know, full head to toe displaying. And then the right one can be maybe just the feet or from the back view of the classroom. So you can set up multiple cameras that way and then have it stream all in one little screen here. All right. The second thing I wanted to show you is what's called virtual webcam. Okay, and this deals with this setting here all the way on the right. And in fact, this is how I'm showing you everything through Facebook Rooms in this virtual camera mode. What happens is, I'm going to go back to one of these other scenes. I can actually start the virtual camera, and I'm going to start it here. And for, especially for dance instructors, I can then open up Zoom. And in Zoom, I can go to my settings, go to the video settings, and because I have OBS virtual camera selected here, you can see that it appears here in my meeting. So if I start a meeting, dang it, hold on. I think it's because I'm already in so many, I'm already streaming live and using Facebook Rooms. I don't think it's gonna start the meeting. But again, you can see that my OBS camera, again, this is what all your students would be seeing, is basically showing what's happening on my OBS screen here. Okay. So you can have, again, dual screen or dual, you know, windows pop up here for, you know, front view and back view. You can have all kinds of stuff that you want to show for your classroom and design it however you want, with cool backgrounds, cool animations, and even photos and videos. Maybe you want to share stuff for your class, or maybe show a video example before class starts. You know, all kinds of different things that you can do with it. Right. One thing to note, this feature for the virtual camera is currently only available on Windows. There is a Mac solution, however, it is a little weird to set up. I personally would wait for the official Mac release of this feature, which they've been saying they've been working on it, and it should be coming soon, but it's not available yet. There are I've tried the beta test version of it, and it actually, there is quite a few bugs on it that they're still working out. All right, so Not currently available for Mac. There is a version or a third-party plugin that was made to do the same thing, but it requires some in-depth coding into your computer on your Mac side itself. So I don't really personally would want to use it, but it's there for you if you really want to try it out. Okay. Best to use Windows. It works flawlessly on Windows. Okay. The next one I wanted to show you is studio mode. With studio mode here under the controls, again, we're returning back to this controls section. Under studio mode, you can have a preview screen. So for example, the right side here is the program. The left is the preview. So the program is actually what's live, and this is what you'll see, if you're ever in a broadcasting studio. The director will actually have two of these screens. One is the program, which is happening live on television or on stream in this case, and the preview is what we're going to actually switch over to when we're ready. All right, so I can do edits on the preview side and change things around before I can push it over to the program side or the live side. In order to do that, you can just kind of click around. Right, so I can choose this. Maybe I want this up a little bit more. As you can see on the right side under the live section, it hasn't moved yet, so it's still displaying this way. Right, you can see my webcam. It's still here and it's still live. I'm waving, right, and it's still here live on the preview side. And I can move this element here, right, and they're still exactly the same, except I move the elements. And then I can move my name down here too.
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I have a quick question.
Sure.
My mic has been messed up. So yeah, so I just wanted to know for the what do you call it, from the cameras, what would you recommend? Because I know I've tried a couple of things and I have not been able to find a camera that works for me. So right now I just use my phone for my live stream using the OBS what do you call it, the OBS camera, the app. So that's what I've been using. I bought a couple of cameras. I didn't like the output, so I returned them back, and I've just been using my phone. So I don't know if you have any recommendation of any camera that would work well for live stream.
Yeah.
If I have to get one, but my phone has been working good. But just in case I need to get a second camera.
Right. Understood. I've actually two things. We can talk on at the end of this.
Okay.
And I'll quickly go over my recommendations for you.
Okay.
But I also, if you were here 2 weeks ago, I actually, my last webinar was about cameras.
Okay. No,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. No worries.
Okay.
But if you look back in the Facebook group and go down the list there on a post, or even just do a search for webinars or cameras, you'll see one of the posts there. It's pre-recorded. It's all there for you. The whole webinar is there for you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I said, if you want to stay till the end of here, we can quickly go over some different camera situations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
No problem.
All right. All right.
Okay, so we're going over 2 hours now. Sorry about that, guys. We're almost done here, though. All right, it's just the tips and tricks, and we'll take some questions here at the end. All right, so studio mode. Again, when I'm ready for the full transition, I could always just click on that transition, or I can change up the transitions, whether it's cut. So as you can see, I just click cut and it cut over. If I go back to scene 2, again, my preview side here, it's a different screen, but it's not showing live here on the program side. If I switch this to fade, and it's fade at 300 milliseconds, again, I can click on that transition and it goes back and it transitions over to the live section. Okay, so you can always preview what you're going to get transitioned over. And I always recommend this for most people that are brand new to OBS because it prevents from any mistakes happening if you accidentally click a scene. Let's say if I'm not in studio mode and I accidentally click on a different scene, but I didn't want to switch over to it yet, that's what it's actually preventing there, right? So unless you have extensive practice with it, I would stay in the studio mode, right? just so that you can see the preview. And then some DJs, especially, they don't need, all the different scene transitions and stuff. They are only using one scene anyways, for the most part at least, because they're focusing on their DJing. Or dancers, right? You might not need multiple scenes either, but it's useful for events, right? Events, you're always going to be changing up what your scene looks like. Right, so great mode to have for studio mode. One last thing here on studio mode is there's a slider here that it'll slowly transition. So if I have scene 2 or scene 3 here, I can control it manually. It's sliding over, or I can keep it in its fade, back and forth, so you can see that the program side, is fading back and forth by me moving the slider around. Okay, so another great feature. Okay, going over multi-view and Streamlabs. Okay, the last thing on the list to talk about on tips and tricks, and this directly involves with audience. All right, interactivity with your audience. Okay, and this is one thing that not really a secret, but I feel is something that most people other than gamers never do for streams, right? Which is, be active with your audience. If you're a DJ, you're DJing for your audience. They always say DJs, it's about recognizing your audience. If they're dancing on the dance floor, if they're enjoying the music, that's what you want to provide for your audience. You want to be able to recognize them. You want to be able to, play to them instead of just for them, right? Like you want to have that personal connection with your audience. And you can do that, even though that we're doing it online and we're, social distancing and everything. It doesn't mean that we can't be interactive with our audience. And this is one key thing that makes a successful stream, and whether your stream is going to start blowing up with followers or whether your event, your online event, is going to get bigger and grow even better on the next ones, right? Or even classes, right? This can be used for classes too, but in my opinion, it's probably more, it's easier and better to be used for live streaming on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. So I'm going to show you Streamlabs. It is a website, but also a tool. I'm going to go over here to my web browser. I'm going to open up Streamlabs. So it's called streamlabs.com. It's best to use your login information, whether it's Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, because it'll ask you to log in with one of those. And why is it doing it here? Oh, here we go. Dashboard. Okay, for me, I just had to click on my dashboard because I'm actually using Streamlabs right now. They have their own version of OBS. It's a little different than what I've shown you, but it's more computer intensive. Not by much, but it is. Right. So my advice is stick with the regular OBS version. And if you want to just experiment, you can try out Streamlabs OBS version. Right. You'll see a lot of my statistics here, so analytics, don't mind that too much here. The one that I want to show you here on the left, all right, is called alert boxes and widgets. Those are the two that I'm only going to go into today. There's a whole ton of other tools that they have, like merchandising. I posted this earlier in the Facebook group that you can actually create a merchandising store for your streams and have alert messages appear when someone buys stuff for you. All right, so I'm not going to go into that now. As far as the merchandising, because I posted it in the Facebook group, but it's here, totally free. They charge you obviously when you actually sell something. You don't keep any inventory. You don't go into you don't have to pre-order any of this. It's just sold as is. So when someone buys it, that's when they make it and they ship it out. So you don't handle shipping, you don't handle their payments. They take the payments and just pay you what you profit off it, right? You can set different prices for it. Sorry, I'm going into pretty in-depth in it already, but you can set different prices, right? So you don't have to stick with the standard rate. So if I'm selling a mug here, you could see it for $18 and I'm only profiting $3 off it. I could charge $25 for a mug and come out with a different profit. So you can set different rates and profits here. All right. So I just wanted to show you a little bit about that. But again, going back to the two that I wanted to show you, which is alert boxes and widgets. Alert boxes is when someone donates or follows you on Twitch, or what are the events are there? There's donations, they make a purchase through the merch store, they follow you, they subscribe to you, they give you bits or raids, all of that stuff in Twitch. And YouTube has their own section too. So again, I just clicked here on the left side under global event types. You can check or uncheck any of these to be used, but you can have something display on your stream when that's done. So for example, the first one here is donations. That's a very common one that people use here. Here in the global settings, you can set the donation event, right? So if I select donation here, and you can have it display the way that you want. So what I'm going to do is select it here. So I'm going to select donation here. And what I'm going to do is right now what I have it set to, and I don't want to change this because I actually stream with this quite often. Sorry for the background noise. But right now, this is what happens when someone makes a donation to me. So I can click on send test for donation, and you'll see in this black box here what happens. All right, gives a little jingle of some, some coins falling and who donated and how much they donated. Okay, you can set the image here. It can be an image or a GIF file, or in my case, it's a WebM file, which is basically like a GIF file or a motion file. It's not a MP4. You can't use MP4 or MOV files, so no video files. But in order to create motion, we use either GIF or GIF files or WebM files. WebM files is more for advanced users. So if there's a funny GIF that you want to use, a lot of people go on, Giphy to find a funny GIF, and you can upload that here and use that. And then the sound, so you can make it have a different sound to appear. So all the other settings, the font you can change, all the durations and all other settings here as far as the font and animation. But those are the key things here: the layout, the image that you want to appear, and the sound. So again, if I click on the test, that's what happens on my stream. Right now, how do you actually bring that over to OBS? Because yeah, it may happen here, but you need to actually bring it over to your stream. In order to do that, you need to grab this URL here. Okay, I'm going to click copy URL, but I don't want to click on this because it'll show you the URL. But if I copy URL, right, it's copied to my clipboard, and it's just a URL address. So I'm going to go back to OBS. Let me go back, turn off studio mode here, and let's go back to this scene. This is where the other use for browser source comes into play. Okay, so not only, again, the browser source here is the YouTube little clip or source, right? What I can do is, if I click a different browser source, this is going to be browser 2, and I change the URL, because again, I copied it from Streamlabs and I pasted here. Oh, now you guys can see my thing. I got to change it now. I should have blocked that out. Anyways, then I can click OK, and now you see an empty box for now. Okay, because the animation hasn't happened yet. Nobody donated yet, but I can place it anywhere I want. I'm just going to place it here in the bottom left corner. Okay, and now what I can do is I'm going to resize this so you can see it side by side. I'm going to resize my window. And I need to get to the send test, so I just need to click on this send test. So you'll see here in OBS This is the box for the animation. If I click send test, it didn't happen. Hold on. I think I might have done something different here. Copy URL. Let's try that again. There you go. Okay. So you can see that the alert appears here. So again, that happens when anybody makes a donation. Okay. And to set up donations and stuff, you could read more on here on Streamlabs. There's some stuff that they'll need to ask you to do in order to accept donations, which is usually through PayPal. There's some other options there for you too, but PayPal is probably the one that's used the most here. And again, you have events for any of these alerts. Donations, when someone merch, which is anytime anybody buys anything. Twitch follows, someone follows you, an alert, you can set an alert for it. My alert here for a follow is a little Mario thing and a little animation here. Bits, raids, all kinds of stuff, subs. Okay, you can set different things to do different animations. Okay, that's alert boxes. Let's go into widgets. Okay, I'm not going to go in depth with all of these. I'm just going to show the ones that might be most useful for you guys. Okay, chat box, you could put the chat there. It's more used, I think, for gamers than dancers or DJs. I mean, the chat box is already in Twitch or YouTube. Like, why do you need to show it on stream? To me, there's no reason. Gamers, a little different story. Just the way that they interact with their audience. Alert box is just what we already talked about. That's this one here. Event list. I'm not going to go too in depth on this, but it's the same thing. You set up browser sources and the events, instead of it just being an animation on who followed you or how much they donated, it's just a constant screen. So what happens is, you can have it just display. So if I click on it here, you'll see there's a little video displaying. But you can see here, it's just this showing on your stream at all times so that they can see who donated and who last followed, or different things. You can set it, all the parameters here. These are all the events that'll happen on this little animation here, but this is constant so that everybody can always see who donated, who followed, who subscribed, or the last one subscribed, so on and so forth. Yeah, let's move back again. Just stop me if you have any questions. All right, so I'm going to try to go through some of the more important ones here for you. Donation goal, same thing. It's a browser source. If I click on it, you can see here, this is the URL that you'll need to copy over to OBS for a browser source. But you can set a goal. Maybe you're doing a fundraiser, and you set a goal of $500, and then this will tally up everybody that's making donations and whether you reach that goal or not. Okay, and then all the parameters here. Yeah, so here, let me just add this real quick. So copy the URL. Gonna go back to OBS. Again, this is another browser source. Almost all of these are gonna be used as a browser source. Okay, so add the browser source here. Click OK. And I don't know why it always has to do this, but I have to always refresh. Oh, I didn't start it. I need to start all these fields first. Let's not go through that. Just know that this, well, let me just do it. Test goal amount is 500. Starting is, let's say I already made 25. And then end date, let's just put 1st of November. Okay, is that right? Oh, I'm missing a 0. Okay, start goal. And there it is. Okay, so there's my goal. Okay. And again, that's live, so it'll, anytime anybody makes a donation, it'll register and see how much you know, they donated, and this poll will keep going up until you reach that mark. Right. So that's donation goals. Those are the 4 major ones that's used pretty heavily in gaming. Okay, the rest of these are actually pretty fun ones. A lot of DJs have been using this emote wall one, and I can demonstrate this one too. If I copy, again, another browser source, what happens is in chat, anytime that, you know, someone types into chat an emote, you can have that emote display on your stream. All right, so very common. I wouldn't say common, but there's a lot of DJs that actually use this pretty well in their streams. Like, for example, you know, a DJ wants to make, you know, wants the crowd to take a shot. All right, let's take a shot, guys. But let me see your fire hands, or let me get a ton of fire emotes, so we can take a shot. And so everybody in chat starts typing that in, or hearts, or whatever it may be that you want to, you know, make them do to appear on the stream. And once that happens, you know, everybody in chat will start seeing it, you know, fly across your screen this way. Okay, so you can set all these parameters, but I'm going to copy this real quick. So I'm going to copy the URL. I'm going to go to OBS. Again, I'm going to add this as another source, browser source. And again, you can size it however you want, but I'm going to keep it like that. I'm going to make it as big as the whole screen so we can actually see it happen. Okay, let's center that a little bit. Okay. This is very helpful on events too. So dance events, I always feel that this is pretty fun to use. But what I have to do now is I gotta resize this. Hold on. Now, because again, I'm logged into my Twitch account for Streamlabs, I'm gonna go to my channel. Oh, I'm not logged in. Let's see if I can just do it if I search for my channel. I don't want to log in. Oh, there. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my chat, and can I bring up my chat? I was able to do this before. Where's my chat? Oh, there. It's on the side. Okay, there's my chat. Okay, let me resize this window again so we can actually. Oh, I can't do it while it's resized. Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, anyways, let's do this. I'm going to display some emotes on the chat if I can. Uh-oh, there's no emotes. Ah, that's unfortunate. I guess I gotta be live to do this. Chat appearance. Yeah, I have to be live. So, sorry I can't show that to you. But basically what's gonna happen is, you know, in this area that I specified for that browser source, if I go back to Streamlabs, all of these emotes will appear over here. Okay, so they'll be flying around your screen. Right. Cool method of how DJs use it. If you want to see how some of them use it, DJ Verse, look him up. He uses this excessively on his, you know, his streams, and you know, everybody loves it. That's all you see in chat. People are just, you know, nonstop blowing up his emotes on his chat. Right. But it makes, again, these features are to engage your audience, right? And that's what this really is all about. It's really about your audience, because, you know, if you're streaming for yourself, okay, that's great and all, but at the same time, you know, the ones that matter are your audience, right? You want to engage your audience here. Okay. Okay. There's a ton of other features here, as you can see. The only other one that I wanted to show you here is a little spin wheel. But you can play around with all these other ones. There's a poll here. The poll is how I use to actually conduct my You Be the Judge dance competition, where all the viewers get to judge on the competition itself. So I pre-created all these polls with all the competitors, and people voted through chat in order to, and you can see from the poll on all the votes and who voted and everything, and the time. That's there's all kinds of settings that you can set for this for the polls, but that's how I conducted my dance competition, and it was great. Like, people loved it, you know, as far as the concept, and again, it made the audience feel a part of the show, right? And again, that's what my whole goal was, you know, I don't want the show just to be about us or the people in the show. I wanted the audience involved. Right. The spin wheel. This is the last thing I want to show you here real quick. This one's pretty cool. It's actual spin wheel for fundraisers, right? Or, you know, you can do different things. You can do raffles, fundraisers with a spin wheel. In my case, this is how I chose who, because this was a one-on-one dance battle for my event. So this is how we decided on who was being selected to go up against each other. All right, so I created a little dance wheel here. Let's see if this will show. So I'm going to copy the URL. Again, another browser source. So you can see that a lot of these are always going to be used as browser sources. Select it here. Let's paste it. And do I have to start this? Save settings. There we go. Okay, so there's the spin wheel, right? And again, you can do this all live. Let me spin the wheel. Okay. And again, this is how we conducted not only choosing the dancers on who goes up against each other, but we also used it to do raffles and giveaways. And there's other techniques here in Streamlabs on how to conduct raffles and giveaways, but this is another cool method of using it all on live stream. I had an MC, you know, along with me, just announcing all these things for all the prizes and contestants and stuff, right? So that's Streamlabs. As far as tips and tricks, you can check it out again, streamlabs.com. They have their own version of OBS, but again, like I said, just kind of I recommend just sticking with the actual real version of OBS and not Streamlabs as of just yet. Streamlabs OBS is great to use too, but until you know the ins and outs of OBS, I wouldn't move to Streamlabs OBS. Just go to Streamlabs OBS's website, okay, and use their tools here, all their widgets and all their boxes and stuff here, all right, and then bring that over to your version of OBS. But again, tons of other stuff here in Streamlabs to play around with, and great to be used for events and DJ streams and whatnot. All of them are, its real goal is to interact with your audience, and that's what what streaming should really be about. It shouldn't be about just you and your show. It should be about your streaming audience, because that's how you're going to grow. All right. Okay. I'm going to go back. To my slide deck here. Just a couple of last things before I start taking some questions here. There's some additional resources that you can use. Again, we kind of gone over it. Streamlabs.com, Twitch broadcasting guidelines, and YouTube broadcasting guidelines. This all talks about the encoding, what settings you should use, just like the chart, but there's more detail in here if you actually go to these websites. Right, so for additional resources. Okay. And then before I start taking questions, again, I just want to appreciate, I know it was long. Oh my gosh, it went to 3 hours. So sorry about that. Thank you for those that have stayed to the end. Greatly appreciate that. I hope you learned quite a bit. It is a lot of stuff. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions, even when you guys are trying this on your own. So thank you again for at least attending, especially those the three of you that are here at the end. But again, donations are optional, so you don't have to feel the need to donate. But again, it would be much appreciated. And again, let me know if you have any questions even after all of this. All right, I'm happy to help as much as I can. And mainly through the Facebook group. All right. But if you want to hit me up personally, that's fine too. So feel free to do that as well. Okay. We have come to the end. I'm actually going to stop the recording before I think some of you guys want to ask some more personal questions here. So give me 1 second. Let me stop the recording.